Thanks so much, Scott, and the team from L2 for having me here this morning. So I'm going to continue on. I won't have quite as many anecdotes about drinking, going to Vegas, and those kind of things. But I think, one thing that I really took away from what Scott said about the authenticity and the importance of the real world, and even though we think about the digital economy, what's still important is how the real economy operates, because we all still live in the real economy. So let me just kick off with some preliminaries here. I'm going to really do two things. First of all, I'm going to outline what my thesis is based on a few years of teaching at the Wharton School, investing in some startups, some of the new companies that are coming out here in New York, also looking at old retail companies, analyzing barcode scanner data and stuff like that when I was a graduate student, and then kind of move into two case studies. I'm going to focus on one company that's been around for a long time in the real world, Crate and Barrel, and then I'm going to focus on another company that now, if you go to the Wharton School, you really can't get in the building unless you mention this company. It's Warby Parker. I'm assuming that most of you here know a little bit about Warby Parker. Those guys were in my class back in 2010 when they started the company, and they came into my office one day and they said, Dave, you've been doing some work on e-commerce. By that point, I'd worked with diapers.com, NetGrocer, a bunch of other companies. We got this idea, we want to sell glasses online. Like, what kind of a crazy idea is that, That's why I'm in the teaching game. I'm like, how is that ever going to work? Don't people want to touch and feel them? Don't they want to try them on? And just as Scott said, the importance of having a physical footprint, I don't think I'm talking out of school here, but Warby Parker over the next few years probably will have north of 100 stores located through the United States. So we'll do two case studies, one on Crate and Barrel and one on Warby Parker. So let me just sort of kick off with the preliminaries. As Scott said, he's kindly made the book available. The title of the book really emphasizes the whole philosophy here, location is still everything. So in the old world of commerce, and since I'm from Wharton, I'm going to show a formula in a moment that relates to the old world of commerce. In the old world of commerce, physical location was really important. So if I operated a store right here, people in the front who are very close, there's a strong gravitational pull. People who are in the back are less likely to show up. So if I have a store at the corner of 38th and Walnut Street, I might get some traffic from 37th, I might get a little bit of traffic from Center City, but nobody's going to drive from Miami and come and visit my store. The customer base drops off very quickly. So the good news about the old economy in a physical store is you know exactly where the customers are going to come from. The bad news is the market is very limited. And e-commerce sort of offers the converse promise. The good news is you can sell to the entire country. The bad news is, how does anyone ever find out about jet.com or diapers.com or anything else? So it's kind of the converse problem. That's why you need those two things operating together. Three really important things about the real world. If I know your real world location, I know three things about you. First of all, I know a lot about your characteristics, your socioeconomic status, your age, your income, your career, and so on. Secondly, I know a lot about your preferences. If you live in the Philadelphia suburbs, you have a different set of preferences than if you live in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And then number three, this is really, really important. If I know where you physically live, I know how good your offline options are. So it's sort of no surprise, Scott had a lot of stuff about internet history, a little bit of internet history here. The first customer of Amazon.com was a fellow, no surprise, who liked to read, but he lived 50 miles away from the nearest bookstore. So the fact that I know those three things tells me a lot about what the distribution of sales is going to look like. So let me give two examples, one for product and one for service. So if you have two customers, one who lives in the Philadelphia suburbs and one who lives next to Duane Reade in Manhattan, even though the internet offers them a flat experience, diapers.com offers the same price, the same assortment, the same delivery, the offer distribution is flat, the demand distribution is never flat. Because the person who lives in the Philadelphia suburbs, 30 minutes from a store, has a much higher propensity to go to diapers.com than somebody right here in Manhattan with a better offline option. The second thing also relates to content. So if you live, let's say, in Philadelphia, and you go to San Diego for an L2 conference, although I don't know if we'd hold them in San Diego when New York is here, and you're looking for where to eat on Yelp, if you see a review written by someone from Minnesota or a review written by someone from Philadelphia, you pay more attention to the review from Philadelphia because you feel some affinity to that person, okay? So with that in mind, let me show you the one and only equation. I get in trouble, being from Wharton. If there's no equations and the head of department finds out, I've been somewhere and taught without some formulas, it's a bad thing. So you probably all know who the fellow is on the left. With the nice hair. This is Isaac Newton. The fellow on the right is a little more obscure, but he's very important if you study retail. His name is William J. Riley. He was a professor at UCLA, and he invented that little formula on the right for retail gravity. And the reason I'm introducing it is it's a good thing to know, and it's also kind of the metaphor for my book, the metaphor for how I think about omni-channel commerce, and also sort of the framework for the book itself. So imagine you have two towns. Town B is the bigger of the two towns, okay, and town A is the smaller. Town B over here has 250,000 people. Town A over here has 100,000 people. So since I'm a professor like Scott, I can't help but cold calling. Alexander, where would you rather shop, in town B or town A? B has 250,000 people, A has 100,000. Town B, very good. See, that wasn't so hard, right? You had a 50-50 chance. So town B, of course, would rather be in a bigger town because there's more stuff. That's the theory of retail agglomeration. Bigger places just have more things on offer. Now imagine the distance, DAB, between the two towns is 75 miles. And what we're calculating there, MAB, is the indifference point. The indifference point is not 37.5 because Alexandra would rather travel further to a place that's bigger. That's what that formula expresses. And if you plug in the numbers, the indifference point is 46. I'd go 46 miles to 250 and 29 miles to 100. And so this is a very powerful metaphor because how do we win in commerce? How do we win in e-commerce? How do we win in commerce generally? We make ourselves big. We tell a great narrative like Red Envelope or Warby Parker. We're not just functional, emotional, and symbolic value with our brand. We're also authenticity, we're personalization, and so on. So we have a great narrative. And then number two, we remove all the frictions. That's how I exert gravitational pull over you as a customer. I make myself as big as possible. I'm the greatest brand that there is in eyewear. And I make it as easy as possible for you to get that product. So make things big and remove all the frictions. So with that in mind, let's do a couple more preliminaries and then go into the case study. So again, I'm a fan of internet history, a little bit like Scott. So I'm going to talk a bit about Bezos and diapers and so on. So 4 things we need to think about when we think about principles for clicks and mortar in the digital economy. So first of all, people use a ton of information from other people. 80% of all decisions that you make about what to eat, where to drive, what to buy, where to go out for dinner, what kind of jeans to wear, where to get your shoes, are influenced by information from other people. I don't have time to talk about this, but it's in the book. 30% of all reviews that are written are false, okay? So put those 2 things together, there's kind of some interesting stuff there. Number 2, every brand that was native digital, like Bonobos, and it's kind of fun, Andy Dunn is a friend of mine. If you go and you look online and you look at Andy talking in 2008, 2009, his big thesis is, why would anyone ever start a store? The store is like the craziest thing that you can imagine. It takes real estate, it has, like managing the product and all that kind of, it's totally crazy. Like every brand that starts from now on is just going to be digital and that's it. Well, what's driving the success of Bonobos, if it ever gets over the hurdle, will be the guide shops and the retail footprint with Nordstrom. So everyone that's digital first also needs offline. The third thing, this is a little bit of jargon, so again, as an academic, I can't help myself. So my advisor, Rajiv Lal at Harvard, actually came up with this, the distinction between digital and non-digital attributes. So if you sell products that have only digital attributes, that means everything about the product can be perfectly communicated through the internet without loss of information. So when Jeff Bezos started Amazon, the number 1 selling product through catalogs was not books. Books were number 25. Why did he go all the way down to 25? Because to communicate the number 1 category, apparel, that has touch and feel components back in 1994, the internet wasn't really very good for that. Still maybe not that good for that even in 2016. So he went all the way down to books because a digital product or a product with only digital attributes you can perfectly communicate. If you're Casper.com and you're selling people mattresses in New York City, it's kind of hard to communicate the touch and feel, and so you have to do some clever things with reviews and so on, which I'll get back to in a moment. So if your product has non-digital attributes, you have to figure out a way to get customers over the uncertainty about what that product is going to look like. So Tony Hsieh, maybe he got lucky because he got out. He had $1 billion exit, which the idea was, I send you 5 pairs of shoes, try 4 on, and send them back, keep 1, and that's $1 billion idea because what it does is it solves the problem of non-digital attributes. If you go to Casper.com, of course, it's not efficient for them to be shipping you mattresses backwards and forwards across the country, but if you go to their website and you connect to the first point about reviews, you can find a review written by another person who's basically the same as you. So I go on there, I say, oh, there's a guy, his name's Joe, he lives in Philadelphia, he's about my age, he sleeps like a starfish, because you have to indicate how you sleep, on the side like a starfish. Sleeps like a starfish for 5 hours a night with a cat. I'm like, that's me, Fortunately, this is being recorded, I shouldn't have said that. Fortunately, it's not actually me, but what they do is they allow you to find your clone in the database, therefore resolving some of your uncertainty about the non-digital components of the product, such that you might actually buy a product that you really need to touch and feel online. And then I'll get to mobile in a second. So one last thing I want to leave you with internet history here I got from a great book by Brad Stone. So when Jeff Bezos started selling books online, he also did something really, really radical, which relates to the first point. He allowed people to review the books, okay? Allowed people to write reviews. And the publishers came to him and said, Mr. Bezos, you're kind of a stupid fellow. If you allow people to review books, that could actually hurt sales. And we know from academic research that if products and services get positive reviews, demand goes up. Negative reviews, demand goes down. And negative reviews are very insidious. If you get a negative review, the next customer in the queue who's about to write a positive review is less likely to do so. Because they're going to do 5 and they see 3, they're like, well, maybe I'm not so sure. And so Bezos took a lot of flack. But you know what Bezos said? This is a very insightful comment. He said to them, you guys don't understand. I don't make money when I sell books. And I think this applies to all of us in the room. I don't make money when I sell groceries. I don't make money when I sell boots. I make money when I help customers make better decisions. So think about that. I make money when I help customers make better decisions. I remove the frictions in the process. Okay, I'm going to come back to mobile. So let me just go now into the 2 case studies. This is based on an article that I just published with a couple of colleagues last year. And this is about sort of information and fulfillment in the omni-channel world. So if you look at the classic text on distribution, going back a few years in Northwestern, the colleagues there, Ann Coughlin and so on, they talk about a channel of distribution or a retail function is really doing 2 things. First of all, delivering information to customers. What's the product like? What are the prices? Where can I get it? And so on. And then secondly, the logistics or the fulfillment. So how do I actually get you stuff? How do I return stuff? How do I do after-sales service and so on? And so if you think about this 2 by 2, the world kind of started up there, then it went down to the bottom, and now I'm going to do 2 case studies that relate to the off-diagonals. Okay? So let me start with the first one. The first one is going to focus on Crate and Barrel, and then the second one on Warby Parker. So you guys all know Crate and Barrel, I imagine? Okay, very good. And this kind of applies to these other stores here too. So again, if we took Scott's sort of history lesson from a few moments ago, if you went and you added .com to pretty much all of these businesses, at least in the beginning, they typically weren't doing too well because people thought, well, we have physical, and then we have kind of the .com thing, and they're run by different people, and they serve different customers, and they're kind of not really fully integrated. So it was the case at crateandbarrel.com, the executive team was concerned that sales through the crateandbarrel.com channel were not as high as they could be. And so they wanted to introduce an innovation here to try and boost sales at that channel. And this is what they did. They ran an experiment. Of course, this is the great thing about the digital economy is you can experiment all the time. And here's the nature of the experiment. So let's imagine everybody on this half of the room is in the so-called treatment group. What does that mean? That means that if you go on, Alex, and you buy a pair of shoes from crateandbarrel.com or you buy some glassware or whatever they're selling, you have 2 options. You can buy the product online and you can pick it up in store, or it can be sent to your home. So the fulfillment, 2 choices. Pick it up in the store or have it sent to you. If you're in the control group and you're not within the purvey of a Crate and Barrel store, you only have 1 option. You buy a set of wine glasses and they get shipped to you. So sort of simple intuition that they teach us in business schools, 2 options is better than 1, typically, right? So you would imagine that sales at crateandbarrel.com should be higher in the treatment group where people have 2 choices for fulfillment once they've placed the order. So Crate and Barrel sets up this experiment and they provide more information on the website in terms of pricing and inventory. And what happens? Well, let me run through from left to right. When you offer customers 2 options, sales at the website go down, okay? And they go down by a lot. This is economically meaningful. People are also more likely to abandon the shopping cart. But there's good news, the last 2 points. Sales in the store go up. Now, why is that? Because when Scott sees those wine glasses and he has full transparency into price, and they got 5 boxes in stock and he wants to buy them, because they have non-digital attributes, he wants to touch and feel them and hold them and click them before he pulls the trigger. So by providing information online, you get the customer part the way down the funnel, but they actually want to come into the store to finish the job. And that's why traffic went up 13% pre and post after putting that information online. And then, my slides aren't really as nice as Scott's ones, but if I changed all the fonts, there's actually a 5th point. Sales of unrelated products went up another 5%, because if you drive more people into the store, when he's there to pick up the wine glasses, he buys himself a dining set as well, okay? All right, so what do we learn from that? That's an example of an offline retailer, offline first, basically leveraging the principle of resistance by providing you more information, getting you down the funnel. Okay? And this is probably a good point before Warby Parker, where I go back to mobile. So on the previous slide, there's kind of 5 things that we have to think about when we think about mobile commerce. Okay? What does that little device do? So number 1, that is the domain of snacking. I'm sure a bunch of you are kind of snacking. This is why in New York Times show, people are more hunched over now. It's like 50 pounds on your back. Remember in the old days, you used to get in the elevator and I don't want to make eye contact with that guy next to me, But now, of course, everybody's snacking. I was in Beijing recently. I was on the freeway. This guy next to me driving the car. What was he doing? He was snacking on his phone, okay? So businesses need to take advantage of the fact that customers are constantly snacking on content all the time. Number two, this is a device where the UI is really simple. Swipe left, swipe right, click. It's made for kind of simple things because it's small real estate. Number three, it's very smart. It knows where you are at all times. Okay, it allows you to consume and also create rich content. Number four, it's a distribution system and a payment system in the pocket of 3.5 billion people around the world. That's never happened in human history before. Imagine that. 3.5 billion people with a distribution channel and a payment channel. And then number five, what it does is it amplifies the power of word of mouth. So I could say to my friend Joe, hey, you got to try this thing called Uber that just drives you around for free. You get in, you get out, you're done. But if I take out my phone and show them how it works, it's more compelling. So those 5 things are really, really critical. There's some other stuff in the book, but just to give you a flavor of that. Okay, let me now go into Warby Parker. Okay, so who in the room had not heard of Warby Parker before? Okay, good. Well, fantastic. We have at least one person. That's good. It's always funny when you ask for a show of hands. It's like 300 people, and like it adds up to like 10. The response rate. But okay. So Warby Parker. Again, most of you probably know, but these guys are kind of disrupting the online eyewear industry. A couple of interesting facts. This business was started by the following observation. So one fellow had left his glasses on a plane, one of the co-founders, and he was complaining that now he was an MBA student, he couldn't afford $500 for Oliver People's glasses. And his friend Neil said to him, gee, that's really funny. I just spent several years working in not-for-profit around the world giving people glasses like for a few bucks. Like, why should a pair of glasses cost the same as an iPhone? So a lot of great ideas start by challenging and questioning the status quo. When Warby Parker started, only 2% of the category was sold online. Most of the category was controlled by a company called Luxottica that does the licensing, the manufacturing, the distribution, and so on. Okay, so these guys started online. And the initial channel was the online channel. You could upload a picture of your face, try on the glasses, and decide to buy them. They also recognized that these products have touch and feel components, so they offered a sampling channel where you could do the following. You could get 5 frames sent to your house for 5 days for free. Try them out, okay? And then they saw increasingly, again, as Scott said earlier, that people sometimes want to come into a physical store and have that experience, so they decide to also open showrooms. Now, I'm cheating a little bit here because what I'm showing here is a physical store. This is actually the store down in Green Street, but the research results I'm going to share are for showrooms. A showroom is literally just here in the auditorium, a display of the product inventory, where you can't actually buy it and take it away. So this is really important. So remember our 2x2 matrix? What did Crate and Barrel do? They offered you online information coupled with offline fulfillment. Warby Parker is the converse. What they're doing is they're offering you offline information. You can go into a showroom, touch and feel all the stuff, like a Bonobos guide shop, but you can't actually take anything away with you. Okay, so you're getting the information, but the fulfillment's still going to be done online. So again, this was an experiment. Imagine everybody on the left side of the room. You've got 2 channels through which you can buy, traditional online or home try-on. And then you guys on the right side of the room now have 3 options. So again, when you do this kind of thing, this is more of an academic point, but you have to control for the fact that they're putting showrooms in locations where they think they're going to work. Okay? So if you do that, you compare 2 versus 3, what do you find? In locations where there are 3 channels instead of 2, overall demand is 9% higher. Sales through the web, so warbyparker.com gets a boost when they put a showroom into a location in the trading area around that showroom. Presumably it's giving the brand more legitimacy, it's generating awareness and so on. However, what's interesting is sales through the sampling channel go down 5%. That kind of looks like bad news, right? I sell 5% fewer glasses through that take 5 and try them out. However, it's not just the sales through that channel you have to care about. Fortunately, we haven't sent out 140,000 pairs of glasses to the wrong address and had to get them back. But we also have to think about how many orders did we send out, right? So the number of orders that we send out goes down by 8%. The sales go down by 5%. What that means is by having a physical showroom, you've improved the conversion rate in your sampling channel. So this is sort of a beautiful win-win of being in the online world and the offline world at the same time. You do something that customers love. So the people who really have the high need for touch and feel, if they've only got online and sampling, they go in sampling. But if they've got online sampling and showroom, those guys get filtered off into the showroom. So the people who choose sampling when they could have gone to the showroom, therefore must have a better match. So the probability of conversion goes up. The repeat home try-on So again, the great thing about working with these young companies is they just give you access to all their data. So if anyone in the room has bought Warby Parker glasses, I know your name, I know your email address, all that kind of stuff. If I see that you've done repeated home try-ons, I might have to send you a rude note, because they cost us $15 every time we send out the box. So when you put in a showroom, that repeated behavior goes down, also the returns go down. So this is an example of a company that really understands topography, okay? I.e. that the landscape is kind of a seamless landscape between online and offline. And the other point I'll make here just to close out, is indicated by this picture. This is the New York Public Library back in 2011, before the guys had too much money. And what you can see here is people in the back are reading books called the Begley, the lady and the guy at the back. Turns out the name on the book is the name of the frame that they're wearing, because they had a bunch of friends and models take over the New York Public Library. Why the library? Because the brand name of the company comes from the first and the last name of an unpublished manuscript by a famous author, Jack Kerouac, whose stuff just happened to be in the library. So this is the other interesting thing about having a physical presence. It's a place where you can create experiences that are consistent with your brand, that then you use the channel of the internet to amplify them, so GQ, Daily Candy, everybody else picks this up, and they get all kinds of other brand benefit from it. Okay, I'm not going to say anything about geography because I see the minus sign by a couple of seconds. But what's interesting here is just the idea of if you have a physical footprint, using technology to make sure that you're customizing what's going on. So the behavior of people in Philadelphia around the Dunkin' Donuts there right now is different than the behavior of people in New York City around the same store. And I guess that is the end. So again, if you get a copy of the book, you'll go through the rest of the gravity framework: geography, resistance, adjacency, understanding who's next to you, vicinity, creating communities of people who share preferences, isolation, understanding customers who have preferences that are different from their neighbors, and then topography is the overall landscape. Why? I kind of ran out of ideas. It's hard to come up with a word that starts with why, okay? So why is kind of corny, why is you? What would you do with the gravity framework? And if you get a copy of the book, I hope that it will help you think through this exciting digital economy. So thank you so much. Thank you.